Welcome to Politics for Patriots. Here's your host, the eviscerator of progressive nonsense, the executioner of imbecility, and the grim reaper of BS, Eddie Zipper.
A group of witches in Brooklyn, I believe that's called a coven, isn't it? The Brooklyn Coven will soon meet together at an occult bookstore to perform a hex on Justice Kavanaugh. I knew this would eventually happen to Kavanaugh when I noticed him wearing those ruby slippers at his confirmation hearing. That was a dead giveaway. An ABC News story quotes the co-owner of the bookstore as saying, and this is a quote, basically, it's all about causing suffering, and we intend to make Kavanaugh suffer. That's right, everyone. It appears that leftist delusion has finally entered the metaphysical realm. And it looks like they've put a lot of effort into this. They're charging $10 a head to attend the hexing. It's a whole big event. And I mean, it's fine to dislike a public office holder, but why go to so much double toil and trouble when you're ultimately just going to embarrass yourself? After the ceremony, I presume everyone is invited back to the head witch's candy house to dine on Hansel and Gretel. Well, they have accomplished one thing. For the first time in my life, I am starting to see the community leaders of Salem in a whole new light. Luckily, I know exactly how to deal with these people. Somebody get me Judy Garland, a tiny dog, and a big bucket of water. I'm melting! Works every time. Now, this is a scary story. But the scary part of the story isn't the hex. It is the fact that these morons can actually step away from their cauldrons to cast a vote in our elections. I'm not that scared when they join hands and read gibberish from their book of shadows, but I see one of these people with an I voted sticker and I'm like, because that is the scariest thing I can think of. Okay, so if, and this is a big if the Democrats can't win the midterms with voodoo alone, if there's no blue wave spell in the DNC's Book of Shadows, will they take back the House and Senate in the quickly approaching midterm elections? A couple shows ago, I went through the toss-up Senate races one by one and concluded that Republicans are going to win seats in the Senate. They might end up with as many as 56 seats. I'm not saying there's a huge red wave crashing down on Democrats or anything like that, but the 2018 map is an abysmally terrible map for Democrats. Remember, the Senate isn't like the House. Every 2 years, all 435 members of the House of Representatives are up for re-election. They have to keep getting re-elected all the time. In the Senate, terms are 6 years long, which means that only 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. It also means that the Democratic senators who are up this year were for the most part last elected in 2012. Back then, there was a President Obama to top the ticket for them. They could count on the Obama turnout machine to flood the polls with Democrats. Look at every election of the last decade. Democrats have crashed and burned in every election where they couldn't benefit from the Obama turnout machine. 2010, 2014, 2016. We have never seen today's ultra-left version of the Democratic Party succeed without Obama topping the ticket. Will that come to an end on Election Day 2018? Not in the Senate, it won't. But the House is a bigger question. I keep hearing that Democrats are going to take back the House. They're going to impeach Trump and impeach Kavanaugh and force the Senate to waste a bunch of time holding trials for every Republican in office. But the only way to know for sure if that is our unfortunate destiny, we need to actually look at the races. This is something that the mainstream media doesn't understand. They think you can just go, oh, Democrats are going to win all these seats because they're in California. And California likes Democrats. And that's like the end of their analysis, okay? That's McPundit analysis all day long. But that's not really how it works. Believe it or not, local politics are actually local. And the color of a state in a presidential election doesn't determine the results of district-level races 2 years later. That should be obvious, but nothing is obvious to the McPundits. But here on this show, we're going to go race by race through these toss-up House seats, and we're going to see what the story behind them is. I'm going to talk a little bit about some polls, but I don't worry too much about the polls here because the more local that polling data gets, the worse it is. So you can't tell much about local, like district level elections from the polls. So I'm going to go through the races, and this is going to last a few shows. So for the next few shows, I'm going to go through the races that Real Clear Politics lists as toss-ups. They've listed 32 districts as toss-ups. One of those 32 is currently held by a Democrat, so they have to hold on to that. But assuming that they can hold on to that one, they're going to need to win. They're going to need to win 12 of the remaining 31 toss-ups. And that doesn't sound that hard. Because, I mean, that's less than half. 12 of 31, that should be easy, right? It sounds easy because it's less than half. But remember, these are currently held by Republicans. Which means that in 2016, people went to the polls in these districts and they voted for Republicans. So in every single one of these districts, something is going to have to change since 2016 when everybody went and voted for Republicans in these districts. So if nothing has changed, the Republican will just win again. So don't make the mistake of thinking that this is a 50-50 flip of the coin type situation. It's not. Democrats really have the deck stacked against them. They're going to have to flip all these districts if they want to take back the House of Representatives. So Democrats are going to have to conjure up a lot of voters who have simply just had it with all this peace and prosperity under the Trump administration. Right? They're going to have to find those anti-4% growthers. People who are having toddler-esque tantrums over 3.9% unemployment. They're going to have to find people who hate that extra money that's showing up in their paycheck every month. Right? Most of these Democrats do have a huge money advantage. Lots of money flowing to Democrat candidates in these midterms, and that's going to make it hard for the Republicans. So this is not just, oh, I'm not going to go through and just say Republicans are going to win all this. Because there are advantages on the Democrat side. Number one of which is the money. So as we talk about these races, remember that the Democrats having more money, the Democrat candidates having more money at their disposal is baked into the cake here. All right, so today I'm going to start out west. If there is a blue wave, this is where it'll happen, out west. Lots of people out there in California, Washington, lots of people out west think it's not okay to be a Republican. I mean, what would happen if you went out and voted for a Republican in the minds of these people?
You'd be creating a space for violence to happen.
Yes, out west, the thought of voting for Republicans can be scary, scary stuff to some people. Yes, a lot of these people out there, they want Democrats in office because they know the Democrats have great big plans for this country.
We'll have to hire multicultural empathizers, build a new safe space.
So if they have money to give to Democrats, They're giving their money to Democrats all over the state. But money is not the deciding factor of any election. You remember Karen Handel versus John Ossoff in the Georgia runoff election? There was all this money coming in for Ossoff from California and from outside of the state of Georgia. Polls were saying, oh, it's so close, Ossoff's going to win. You know, Alyssa Milano was out here doing whatever Alyssa Milano does during election. Who cares? I don't even know. Celebrities are just the worst. Or, you know, people who were celebrities at some point, 20 years ago? All right, there's no time to get sidetracked today, so here we go. Out west. California's 10th district. It's the Democrat Josh Horter versus Republican Jeff Denham. First, let's look at the jungle primary. To me, this is the most useful measure that we have to look at. California doesn't have separate Democratic and Republican primaries. Every candidate is just lumped into one big primary, and the top two vote getters are the general election candidates, even if they're both Democrats, even if they're both Republicans. Which, this election format is stupid for the competition of ideas, but it is fantastic for forecasting what will happen in the general election. So here's how the jungle primary went down. Republican candidates in this district received a majority of the total vote at 52%. Republicans received a majority of the total vote. Okay, so my question, where was this big blue wave in July when this primary took place? Where were all those Democrat voters who are just bursting to get to the polls and punish President Trump? They didn't show up over the summer. Now, it is true that in the 2016 election, Trump lost this district by 3 points. But guess who else lost this district? Mitt Romney in 2012. Yet Jeff Denham, the incumbent in this race, has been able to hold it through all of that. In 2016, as Trump was losing by 3 at the top of the ballot, Denham was simultaneously on the same ballot among the exact same voters. He was winning by 3. When Romney was at the top of the ticket losing by 3, Denham was right below him on the ticket winning by 5. So, the idea that, Trump lost this district in 2016, so therefore a Democrat is going to win that. No. There's no logic to that. As Trump was losing this district at the exact same time, on the exact same ticket, a Republican was winning this House seat. So that's not a measure of anything. A Berkeley IGS poll from September showed Horter with a 5-point lead, but forgive me if I have my doubts about the Berkeley IGS polls. In a lot of these California districts, one of the only polls they have, and some of them the only poll they have, is this Berkeley IGS poll. Now, Berkeley uses post-stratification on their sample, which means that they're basically taking a guess at what the electorate is going to look like. You give a likely voter poll to 5 different pollsters and let each of them perform their own post-stratification on the poll, and guess what? You're going to wind up with 5 different poll results. I'm going to go ahead and take a shot in the dark here and say that Berkeley's poll is not going to be overconfident about how Republicans are going to perform. Either way, the results are inside the margin of error in this district. They show Horter up by 5, but the margin of error on the poll is also 5. So throw the poll out. It's a toss-up. But the substantial advantages of incumbency are all on Denham's side. And I'm not going to get into all the different advantages of incumbency. There are lots of them. Credit claiming, media access, franking privilege. There are bunches. But in this case, all those advantages are all on the side of the Republican. All right, and, better than going through each advantage of incumbency, I'll just tell you what the advantages of incumbency mean. Okay, since World War II, and this is a Brookings statistic, since World War II, House incumbents win 93% of the time. In 2016, House incumbents won 98% of the time. And meanwhile, while you have these statistics that say basically that incumbents almost always win, meanwhile, Democrats need lots of House incumbents to get smoked in these midterms. So they need historical averages to mean nothing here. Okay, on to the next district here, California's 45th. Mimi Walters won the jungle primary in this district with a majority of the vote. No poll they could take could ever be a better forecast of the general election than that jungle primary. I'm not saying here Republicans won a majority in that primary. I'm telling you, Mimi Walters alone won a majority of the votes. So there was definitely no blue wave happening there. There was no blue wave over the summer in California. And that's, by the way, that's where the blue wave was most likely to show up. That's where Democrats have been counting on the blue wave to wash away a history of success for Republicans. Berkeley and New York Times polls both show Walters. That's the Republican, Mimi Walters, in this race. Both these polls show Walters losing by single digits. Both are a fraction of a point within the margin of error. Take the polls how you want. The jungle primary means way more to me. These are people who actually showed up to vote. Right? The advantages of incumbency mean way more than the polls to me. And Mimi Walters is the incumbent here. Here's what else means way more to me. In 2016, when Trump was losing this district by 5, Mimi Walters, on the exact same ticket, exact same voters, she won this district by, drumroll please, 17 points. In 2014, which was a midterm year like this year, Walters won there by 31. So here we have the Berkeley and New York Times on one side, but history, incumbency, the primary results on the other. Right? If any of these California districts we're talking about are going to stay red, this is the one I'm betting on the most. I mean, Democrats are hoping in this district to flip a 17-point victory that just happened 2 years ago. Okay, I don't care what the polls say. That is not an easy feat. And by the way, I certainly don't care what polls from Berkeley or the New York Times say. All right, California's 25th district, another Republican incumbent is up for re-election. His name is Stephen Knight. Again, we have 2 polls. Again, one is from Berkeley and one is from the New York Times. They were both conducted at the same time. They both have results within the margin of error. Berkeley shows Knight down by 4. The New York Times shows him up by 2. Has any Republican in the history of the world lost an election after being up in a New York Times poll? I'd be shocked. This is actually a New York Times Siena poll. They did some local polling in the 2016 election. Let's see how they did here. Their last poll of Pennsylvania had Clinton up by 7, so swing and a miss on that one. Trump actually won Pennsylvania. They were outside their margin of error there. Their last North Carolina poll showed the race tied. Trump won by about 4. So I think they were outside their margin of error on that one as well. So it's safe to say that New York Times Siena is not a GOP polling outfit disguised as an unbiased pollster. And they have the Republican up by 2 in this race. Let's see. Like Mimi Walters, I don't care about them, but even if the Republicans are up in those polls, I just know that those polls don't know what they're talking about. So I'm not even worried about it. Now, this is the stuff that interests me more. Like Mimi Walters, Knight won a majority of the votes in the summer jungle primary. He won 52% all by himself. His opponent had 21%, and that was split with some other Democrats. In 2016, while Trump was losing this district by 7 points, Knight was winning it by 7. Those are the exact same voters voting on the exact same ballot, but 7 points in the positive for Knight, 7 points in deficit for Donald Trump. So again, just because President Trump lost these districts, that doesn't mean anything. They voted for Republicans and Democrats at the exact same time. They voted for Clinton. They voted for the Republican in that race. That's just how they vote. Local elections are actually local. Memo to the McPundits. Anti-Trumpism is not enough, especially when Trump isn't on the ballot. People aren't mindless party robots. They know how to go and vote without basing it on the letter by the person's name. All right, let's move on. California's 48th district. New York Times and Berkeley polls from September both show it tied for what that's worth, but Trump only lost this district by 1 point in 2016. But while that was happening, Rohrabacher, the Republican incumbent here, managed to eke out a 17-point victory. That's just in 2016. That's just 2 years ago. All right, he's an incumbent, so he has all those substantial advantages of incumbency that I talked about. And let's see, Republicans took 53% of the vote in the jungle primary. So I don't know where that blue wave was over the summer, but I can tell you that Democrats better hope that a bunch of people show up and vote Democrat who did not bother to show up over the summer. And that could happen. That's possible. But I can tell you this right now, and the McPundits count on you forgetting stuff like this, but before these California primaries, all I heard about was how huge the Democrat turnout was going to be because they hated President Trump so much, and they were going to send him a message. It was in the news every single day leading up to those primaries, and then that story just disappeared. Those McPundits had new things to talk about, and nobody was asking them, hey, where were all those Democrats in the California jungle primaries that you have been telling us were going to show up? They didn't show up. All right, over to California's 39th district. Now, California's 39th does not have an incumbent. The Republican who held that seat is vacating the seat, and somebody new is going to win it. So there's no incumbent in this race, so those advantages are out the window. Right? But this is actually one of the most interesting races in the country. The Republican running in this district is a woman named Young Kim. She's a Korean immigrant, and get ready to fall in love with her as I play you this clip from one of her ads.
When my family came to this country, we came legally. And not because we wanted handouts, but because we wanted the opportunity America provided to succeed on our own.
I love that. It's always great to hear a reminder like that. That really shows you Republicans aren't against immigration. That is such a bogus talking point that we're against immigration. No, we're not. I don't know anybody who is against legal immigration. The great thing that happens when somebody like Young Kim runs as a Republican is that it really neutralizes the Democrats' bogus identity politics talking points. It's great. I mean, go try to smear Young Kim as being an immigrant-hating, anti-woman Republican. Good luck. So I'm going to root hard for her in California's 39th district. If she wins this race, she will become the first Korean-American woman ever to serve in the House of Representatives. Now, a mid-September Monmouth poll shows Kim up by 10 in that district, while a Berkeley poll conducted at the exact same time shows Kim down by 1. So somebody is way outside their margin of error. Somebody did not do a good poll. I was already suspicious of Berkeley's post-stratification of their samples. I think this really raises some questions about that post-stratification. Either way, Kim is receiving fantastic media coverage. That's so rare for a Republican. And that is one of the advantages of incumbency, is that media access. But Kim is getting even better media access than an incumbent would because of her unique story. And she's making national headlines because of that. And when is the last time you heard a Republican get a headline this good from NBC News? Young Kim's congressional campaign is a run 2 decades in the making. That's a positive headline. You never see a positive headline on NBC for a Republican like that. In Style magazine, which is a national fashion magazine, ran a very positive profile on her that I read. It was really good. Like I said, she's really interesting. All right, let's look at some other data. In 2016, the Republican incumbent, who is not Kim, the Republican incumbent won this seat by 15 with Trump at the top of the ballot. He lost this district by 9, so that's a 24-point difference there. The Republican House incumbent did 24 points better than President Trump. Clearly, these people in California know how to separate national politics from local politics, and good for them. They don't look at the letter by a candidate's name. They look at whether or not they like that candidate. That's the only way that the electorate can go 9 points for Hillary Clinton, but in the other direction, 15 points for the Republican House candidate on the same ticket. So the point is, voters aren't as stupid as the national media constantly pretends that they are. The national media is pretty stupid. Most of the McPundits literally can't look at anything except the letter by the name. All right, in the jungle primaries on this one, Republicans took 54% of the vote. So no blue wave in this district during the primaries. I'm really feeling confident that Kim is going to win this one. In terms of confidence, I'm putting this one up there with Mimi Walters in the 49th district. I think both of these women are going to win, right? Because you look at the jungle primary and you see that there was no blue wave. Republicans won the majority of the votes. You look at the fact that even when Trump lost this district in 2016, the Republican incumbent still won the seat by 15. You look at the media access. You look at the poll, the one that says that Kim is up 10. And I think there's a strong argument that she's going to come out on top in this district. Oh, and I forgot to even factor in the fact that she's neutralizing the identity politics. You can't go around calling her anti-immigrant or anti-woman, which is a big phony talking point that Democrats like to use all over the country. All right, next up, Washington's 8th district. The only October poll for this one, an Elway poll, shows the Republican up by 10 points. So that is pretty encouraging. A September New York Times poll shows the Republican down by 1. All right, that's why it is a toss-up, even though the most recent poll says that Rossi, the Republican, is plus 10. There's no incumbent in this race. Trump lost this district by 3. Romney lost it by 1, McCain lost it by 5, but the Republican incumbent who ran in 2016 while Trump was losing by 3 won this district by 20 points. Having said all that, this is one district where maybe there was a little bit of a blue wave in the jungle primary. The Democrats did better than Republicans in that jungle primary. Just a couple points better, but better. On the other hand, as is the case in most of these jungle primaries, the Democratic portion of the primary was more competitive than the Republican portion. So sometimes in these jungle primaries, if you have one Republican in the race, but you have 8 Democrats, well, there's more competition on the Democrat side, so more Democrats are going to be enthused and show up to vote. So that could have played a role in that. Still, the jungle primary there does make me a little bit nervous on that one. Based on the history of this district and the fact that it has not just gone Republican over the last 10 years, but it has also trended towards Republicans in the last 10 years. I think the Rossi plus 10 poll is probably more accurate than the Rossi minus 1 poll. There's no Berkeley poll on this one because they only did the California races. This one is in Washington's 8th district. Okay, last race of the day. This one is in Utah. It's Utah's 4th district. And there's really no good reason to think that the incumbent Mia Love will lose this district. 6 polls show her averaging a lead of 5 points. Okay, Love's lead in these polls is 3, 6, 4, 6, 5, and 6. But the one most recent poll shows the race tied. That's one poll. Okay, it shows that this is a tied race. But Love is the incumbent. Trump won this district by 7 points. There's no primaries to look at because both candidates were chosen via convention. I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't think this one is a toss-up at all. Love won it by 12 points in 2016. That's just 2 years ago. Everything points to Love holding this district except one poll. All right, this is not actually really a toss-up district. This belongs in the likely GOP category. I'd be shocked if there is any Love lost in Utah's 4th district. Love lost. You see what I did there. All right, so there's a look at your first 7 toss-up races in the House elections. 6 of them are in best case scenario for Democrats. Deep blue states, California and Washington, that's the best case scenario geographically for Democrats. Yet of these 7 races, I don't think Democrats will pull off the upset in more than 2 of them, possibly 3. So worst case scenario, I think, is that Republicans end up losing 3 toss-up seats out west out of 7. And that would mean that of the 24 remaining Republican seats that are toss-ups, Democrats need, and this is the best case scenario for them, because I really think that they're only going to win probably 2 of those out west races that I just went through, but I'm trying to keep it worst case scenario for GOP here, is that of those 24 remaining Republican seats, Democrats need 10 of those. 10 out of the next 23 in order to take control of the House of Representatives. All right, I'm going to be back on Wednesday to look at those districts in the middle of the country. And then Saturday, a week from today, I'll do an episode where I look at the eastern districts. Okay, so this is the place for a much closer look at all those House seats. There's no generic congressional ballot here because there are no generic congressional elections. Each one is set in a separate district and has a separate array of circumstances surrounding it. The McPundits want to do election analysis that contains no context. That's not how politics works. So I'll be back on Wednesday and Saturday with context for these races. I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you did, please subscribe on iTunes. Please leave me a review on iTunes. If you live in one of these toss-up districts, shoot me an email at patriots@eddiezipper.com. That's patriots@eddiezipper.com. And let me know what the race looks like through your eyes. I'm dying to get perspective from people who live in these districts. All right, that's it for today. I'm out of here.
You'd be creating a space for violence to happen.
You just listened to Politics for Patriots with Eddie Zipper. Email the show at patriots@eddiezipper.com and please subscribe.